You awaken to the faint clang of bronze bells in the distance. Temple bells, marking the first hour after sunrise. It's early. Not sunrise early, but Roman early, meaning most of the city is already well into its routine. You are a free, male citizen of modest means, living in the Subura district of Rome during the late Republic, around 70 BCE. Your home? A cramped third-floor apartment in a tall wooden insula that creaks with every gust of wind. The air smells of charcoal, cooked lentils, and the faint sting of human waste. A smell you no longer register unless it's especially warm or especially strong. There are no windows in your room, only wooden shutters, so the morning light slants through like slices of gold. You have slept in a tunic, linen patched twice, and on a straw mattress that has thinned from years of use. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and immediately regret it. The floor is cold, damp from the humid Roman night. There is no private lavatory. If nature calls, you use the communal latrine 2 blocks down, or a chamber pot you share with your brother. This morning, it's the pot. You mutter a brief prayer to Cloacina, goddess of the sewer, more out of habit than belief. Your wife is already up. She is downstairs at the fountain, waiting her turn to fetch water in clay amphorae. The line is always long in the mornings, especially near the Subura. Rome's aqueducts are marvels, but the neighborhoods of the poor see water last. If she's lucky, she'll be back within the hour. You start your day without bathing. Baths are reserved for the afternoon, and besides, you couldn't afford private ones. Public thermae like the baths of Agrippa don't open this early, and even if they did, the entry fee, though small, adds up. You splash your face with leftover rainwater collected in a broken amphora and dry off with a rough woolen cloth. For breakfast, you chew on a crust of yesterday's bread dipped in watered-down wine. There's no sugar in your diet, and honey is expensive. You may, if your wife managed to haggle well yesterday, have a fig or two. Meat is rare, unless it's a festival day, and today is not. You dress in your everyday tunic, a dull beige thing cinched at the waist with a rope, and wrap a worn toga over it. It's not the elegant white toga virilis of orators and senators. Yours is functional, dirty at the hem, and heavy. The folds are hard to manage. Romans like to say it builds discipline. Before leaving your home, you mutter a small invocation to the household gods, the Lares and Penates. Their shrine sits in the corner, tucked into a wall niche with offerings from previous days. Burnt incense, a coin, and a wilted garland. There is little grandeur here, but much routine. The stairs down are steep and treacherous. Your building has no handrails, and collapses are not uncommon. As you pass the second floor, you hear a child crying. Above you, someone is shouting in Greek. Your upstairs neighbors are immigrants from the Aegean, possibly slaves or freedmen. You do not understand much of what they say, but the tone is universal. They are late, and someone is angry. Stepping outside, the full morning hits you. The Subura is already loud. Artisans hammer at bronze, cartwheels groan, vendors shout the freshness of their olives. A woman balances a basket of laundry on her head. A man with a wooden leg sells bread from a push cart. You step aside for a group of children chasing a mangy dog. It's chaotic, but this is home. You make your way toward the Forum, not for politics, but for work. You're a scribe today, a day laborer tomorrow. Most mornings you wait by the columns near the Basilica Aemilia, hoping someone will need you to copy documents, tally accounts, or write a letter. You are literate, which helps. But literacy does not guarantee employment, especially in a city, where slaves with writing skills are cheaper and more obedient. Along the way, you pass the fish market. The smell is overpowering. Salted sardines, rotting eels, river perch. Fishmongers have been gutting their stock since dawn. A priest of Mars passes you, flanked by 2 boys carrying a sacrificial lamb. You avert your gaze, not because you're pious, but because eye contact might make you seem disrespectful. And in Rome, appearances matter. By now, your feet ache. Roman sandals, open-toed, made of thick leather, offer no cushioning. You walk on flagstones worn smooth by centuries of feet. Every corner brings another street performer, another beggar, another child hawking painted charms. You step over puddles of wine, blood, and who knows what else. You arrive at the Forum just as the sun climbs higher. There's a buzz in the air. Not excitement, but motion, the way a hive always hums. You take your usual place, lean against a column, and wait. Around you, other men loiter. Tradesmen, poets, grifters. Some sleep sitting up. Some pretend to be more important than they are. A young nobleman walks past, his toga pristine and white as marble. He does not see you. Your stomach growls. You remain by the column for nearly an hour. The sun has crept up the side of the basilica now, and the shade is thinning. The Forum is busier. You hear the hammer of a blacksmith from across the way and the chant-like calls of fishmongers still trying to unload their slow-moving stock. Behind you, someone is rehearsing a speech, a young law student by the sound of it, muttering lines under his breath and waving his hands like Cicero in training. Then, finally, a job. A flax merchant needs a letter scribed for a buyer in Capua. It's nothing dramatic, just a confirmation of quantities, shipping dates, and agreed prices. You sit beside him on a low stone bench, pull a wax tablet from your satchel, and begin to carve out the lines with your stylus. Your handwriting is quick, practiced, not elegant, but legible. He seems satisfied. He pays you in coin, 2 asses. It's enough for some chickpeas or a cup of watered wine later. Not enough for meat. Definitely not enough for olive oil. But still, better than nothing. You try to pick up more work. You ask a clothier if he needs help drafting contracts. He shakes his head. You linger near the steps of the rostra, listening to a mid-tier politician argue for grain subsidies. No one really listens. A pair of plebs snore under a fig tree, while a pickpocket eyes the distracted crowd. You've been robbed before. Once they took your whole satchel. Tools, stylus, tablets, everything. You had to borrow a set from a neighbor for nearly 2 weeks. As the sun nears its peak, the Forum begins to empty out. The morning hours are for business. The afternoon hours are for baths. You can't afford the larger thermi today, so you head instead for a smaller balnea tucked between 2 bakeries in the Esquiline. Entry costs a quadrans, the smallest coin in Rome. It's a rough place, frequented by workmen and mule drivers, but it's better than staying filthy. Inside, the air is thick with steam and the scent of oil. Cheap oil, but better than none. The floor is slick, the walls sweaty. You undress and hand your clothes to the attendant, who stores them on a high shelf with a long stick. You hope he remembers which are yours. The bath progresses like any other. First, the tepidarium, then the caldarium. You sweat until your scalp prickles. A friend spots you and shares a scrap of gossip. Someone poisoned their cousin over inheritance money. You nod, but you've heard this story before. It's always the cousin. You scrub yourself with a strigil, using crushed beans and ashes. There is no soap. The man next to you talks about chariot races, then politics, then taxes, then back to chariots. No one says anything useful. No one really wants to. The bath is for ritual more than rejuvenation. Cleaned and slightly lighter, you dress again and head out. You have one more errand before returning home. Bread. If your wife hasn't beaten you to the baker's queue, you'll need to secure a loaf yourself. The government provides grain doles to citizens, but you still have to grind it or bake it, or trade it for someone else's labor. The baker near the Subura sells flat loaves scored with ash lines from the oven floor. You buy one that's still warm. A good sign. Sometimes they're hard as roof tiles. You pass a group of temple acolytes leading a procession toward the Temple of Vesta. Girls with wreaths of laurel walk silently behind a priestess in white. She carries a brazier with sacred fire. You slow your steps and watch them pass, not out of reverence, but rhythm. This happens every week. The same walk, the same incense, the same faces. A fruit seller calls out to you. He's offering bruised apples at half price. You inspect one, squeeze it, then shake your head. The coin you earned earlier is already light in your pouch. You'll stretch what you have. You always do. Back in the Subura, the shadows grow long. Children kick a leather ball down an alley, and an old woman sweeps her stoop with a fraying broom. Someone is roasting onions. You follow the smell not because you're hungry. You're always hungry, but because it's familiar. It reminds you of your mother's house years ago before she died in a fire caused by an overturned brazier. As you approach your apartment, a boy runs past, yelling about a stolen chicken. Two men argue over whether Jupiter or Mercury is to blame for their bad luck today. You don't engage. You've learned not to. Your wife is home. She's boiling lentils in a cracked pot over coals. She managed to get a handful of olives today. You thank her. You share a meal that's quiet but nourishing. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. As dusk settles, the sounds of Rome mellow. The hammering stops. The shouting fades. The last carts roll by. You lean out the window and watch the smoke rise from rooftops. Somewhere, a lyre player is practicing scales. Badly. You smile. You've survived another day in the Roman Empire, not through conquest, not through speech-making or swordplay, but through sheer ordinary endurance. But the day isn't done yet. As the sun dips behind the rooftops, the amber glow of oil lamps begins to flicker across the Subura. You light yours carefully. Oil isn't cheap, and each evening requires measured use. The lamp sputters once before catching, casting a trembling halo across the walls of your one-room home. Your wife settles into her corner, mending the frayed edge of your tunic with a dull bronze needle. Her eyes are tired. She's been on her feet since the first light, fetching water, cleaning, bargaining for vegetables, managing the chaos of street vendors and wandering goats. She doesn't speak much in the evenings, not because she has nothing to say, but because silence feels earned. You hear someone on the landing outside. It's your neighbor, a cooper who makes barrels. He's humming a song in Oscan, the language of his childhood. You don't understand the words, but you know it's a lullaby. His youngest daughter is colicky, has been for weeks. You'd complain, but honestly, the sound is less jarring than the pigs that root through trash outside your door most nights. You step out for a while. The air is cooler now. Rome smells different at night. Less filth, more smoke. Some households burn laurel leaves to purify their rooms. Others simply let the ash settle. The sounds are fewer but sharper. A woman weeping behind a wall. The creak of a wine cart's wheel. A distant scuffle you wisely ignore. A Roman patrol walks past. Vigilantes, more like night guards than soldiers. They carry clubs and small shields and nod as they pass. You nod back. Best to be seen as cooperative. Fires are common, theft is more common, and they have the authority to arrest without cause. You once watched them beat a drunk man half to death for urinating near a shrine. You wandered toward the Papina, a local wine shop. It's a narrow den, smoky and crowded, but the drinks are watered down and the benches are warm. Inside, there's a table of gamblers throwing dice. A debate rages in the corner about whether Marius was better for Rome than Sulla. You do not weigh in. Instead, you buy a small cup of wine, 2 parts water, 1 part vinegar, tinged vintage. It burns, but not unpleasantly. A man at your table tries to sell you a chicken. Another offers a carved comb. You have no money for either. You sip slowly, letting the dull buzz settle into your limbs. A poet begins to recite verses near the doorway. They're not good. Rhymes about figs and donkeys. Someone laughs. Someone else throws a crust of bread. The poet bows like he's Cicero addressing the Senate. Eventually, you return home. Your building creaks again as you climb the stairs. The upper floors are risky. Fires start easily here. Braziers topple. Oil lamps crack. Careless neighbors. Forget. One collapsed structure last year took 3 families with it. But rent is cheaper the higher you go, and you've learned to sleep with one ear open. Inside, your wife is asleep. The fire is nearly out, just embers now. You add a splinter of pine and watch the soft glow expand. The small shrine to the Lares still holds yesterday's incense. You make a mental note to bring new offerings tomorrow, perhaps a sprig of rosemary, or a coin if you earn one. You lie down on the straw mattress. It rustles under you. A rat scuttles in the rafters. From the next room, someone coughs. You stare at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of a city finally winding down. You wonder, briefly, what it would be like to be rich. To own a domus with a tiled courtyard and slaves to fetch your bathwater. To recline on a couch while a lyre plays in the distance. To wake up without hunger. But you've never been hungry enough to hate your life, only enough to keep going. You think of your son. He's still young, barely walking. Today he learned to say the name of the family dog. You smile in the dark. He'll grow up in this same city, maybe in this same building. Maybe he'll be a scribe too. Maybe something better. Outside, the moon is rising, thin and pale. Rome does not sleep, not completely. Somewhere, a senator is whispering secrets. Somewhere else, a slave plots escape. But here, in your small rented room, you close your eyes and let the weight of the day settle into your bones. You have survived one full day in the Roman Empire. Not as a soldier, not as a senator, not as a statue-worthy hero, but as a quiet, functional citizen in the belly of the world's greatest city. And that, as far as history is concerned, is more remarkable than it sounds. You wake before sunrise to the sound of leather creaking and iron clinking. It's the 4th watch of the night, still dark, but the stars are fading above your encampment. You're a Roman legionary, one of nearly 5,000 soldiers stationed near the Rhine frontier. Today, the legion is moving east. Another fort, another stretch of forest, another road to build. You roll off your straw-filled bedroll and immediately feel the chill. The Germanic air is wet and biting, and your woolen tunic does little to help. You slept in it, as always. Your sandals, caligae, are damp with dew, and you curse the man who designed open-toed boots for northern campaigns. You rub your feet and stretch your arms, already aching from yesterday's drill. You know the routine. Before anything else, you pack. Your sarsina, the marching pack, is laid out beside your gear. It is not light. Every item has its place, and none of it is optional. Roman military doctrine prizes uniformity and readiness, and even the smallest violation can earn you a flogging. There is no grace for forgetfulness. You begin with the essentials. First, your cloak, thick wool, scratchy, waterproofed with oil. It is folded tightly and rolled into a bundle to tie to your furka, the Y-shaped carrying pole you'll sling over your shoulder. The cloak serves as your blanket, your poncho, and, on unlucky nights, your only pillow. Next is your cooking pot. Blackened, iron, dented at the rim. It hangs from the pole along with a wooden bowl and a drinking cup. Then comes your ration bag. Hardtack biscuits, dried legumes, a strip or two of salted pork, vinegar to mix with water, and a handful of dried fruit if you're lucky. Enough food for 3 days, if rationed. You pack it tightly in a leather pouch that smells like smoke and grease. You check your tools, a mattock for digging trenches, a hatchet for chopping wood, a spade for building ramparts. They hang in loops from your belt or lash to the pole. Each soldier in the Roman army is a builder as much as a fighter. You dig your own defenses, pitch your own tent, clear your own path. No one does it for you. Then comes your gear. Your helmet, bronze, with a ridged neck guard and cheek plates. Your gladius, short and double-edged, sheathed and strapped to your side. Your pugio, a dagger, rests on the opposite hip. You test the weight of your scutum, the curved rectangular shield, and give it a small shake. It rattles. You'll need to tighten the grip before setting out. You lace your caligae tightly. The leather thongs wrap around your ankles in a crisscross pattern, designed to support long marches. They offer no padding, and after 20 miles, your soles will feel every stone. Once your gear is set, you move on to your tent duties. You share a contubernium, a small 8-man squad, and your group shares a leather tent barely tall enough to crouch in. You and your tent mates disassemble it quickly, folding the heavy hide and binding the ropes. The wooden pegs go into a cloth sack. These will be carried in rotation by different soldiers each day. Today, it's your turn. The centurion walks by. His vine staff taps rhythmically on the ground as he inspects each man's pack. He says nothing if you're in order. If not, you'll hear it. Today, he passes you without a glance. You gather near the road as the first hints of sunrise touch the trees. The sky is the color of damp ash. Your pack, gear, weapons, tools, and tent load weigh around 80 Roman pounds, nearly 35 kilograms. The furca digs into your shoulder already. You adjust it slightly, knowing the ache will become a dull companion within the hour. The legion doesn't move all at once. Orders come from above, commands from the legate, passed down through tribunes, centurions, and optios. When the horn sounds, the march begins. You are positioned mid-cohort, second column, behind a mule cart carrying spare javelins and armor. Your cohort flag, painted with the insignia of a boar, flutters above the line. The soldiers around you murmur quietly, checking straps, nudging their gear, shifting weight from foot to foot. Then a trumpet blast. The march begins. It is not fast. Roman legions move methodically, about 20 miles a day on standard terrain. The rhythm is steady. Left foot, right foot, repeat. You've been trained to keep formation, even in silence. Discipline is everything. Spacing is measured by eyesight, and deviation can cause a tangle of limbs and complaints. The road you walk is one your own legion began building 2 months ago. It's straight, unnaturally so, cut through forests, across rivers, and over hills. The paving stones are uneven in places, still unfinished. Your sandals clack against the hard surface with every step. The first hour passes in silence, broken only by the sounds of iron tools clanging against each other and the soft breath of effort from the men around you. The sun is finally up now, a pale disk in a misty sky. Birds call from the trees, though you cannot see them. After several miles, the line halts for a brief rest. You drop your pack carefully. Never toss it. The tools inside could break your rations or worse. You squat on your haunches and rub your neck, already stiff from the pole. A soldier beside you mutters about a sore tooth. Another one adjusts his bandaged foot. No one complains loudly. Complaining too much marks you, and the centurion is always listening. You sip vinegar water from your flask. It's bitter but safe. Clean water is rare on the march. A few men chew on dry bread. You hold off. You've learned to conserve your meals. Hunger grows louder in the second half of the day. Then, with no warning but another trumpet, the column rises again. The march resumes. You pick up your pole and shift the weight again. Your legs are beginning to settle into the rhythm. Your mind drifts. You think about home if you have one, about your pay, which is still owed for the last campaign. about the rumors of unrest in Dacia, and whether this march ends in battle or boredom. You think about wine, about clean water, about a bed, about whether the rain will come today. But for now, you march. And as the road disappears into the forest, stone by stone, step by step, your life becomes that of every Roman legionary. Heavy, quiet, and endlessly forward. The forest opens into a clearing by midday, and the marching stops. A decurion rides up ahead, raising a red cloth on a short pole. That's the signal. The column halts, and the orders ripple backward. This will be the night's camp. You're relieved, but only slightly. Because now comes the second part of every legionary's day. Building. No one unpacks their bedding yet. There are no tents until there are ditches. The Roman army doesn't sleep on open ground. It builds a fortified camp every night. Always the same shape, rectangular, aligned with the cardinal directions, surrounded by a ditch and earthen wall. You could do it in your sleep by now. In fact, you have, several times, half awake from fever or rain, or both. The centurion's voice booms across the clearing. Tools out, form ranks, we dig now, sleep later. You pull your mattock from the pack and trudge to the marked line of the future camp wall. The ground is hard, dotted with roots and stones. You dig anyway. One swing at a time, then another. You are paired with the man beside you. He loosens the soil while you shovel it aside. The ditch must be 5 Roman feet deep, 2 wide, shallow. By modern standards, but in a pinch, enough to slow a charge. The first hour of digging is mechanical. Your arms burn, your tunic is soaked. The sun presses down like a punishment. Sweat rolls down your temple, stings your eyes, pools in the small of your back. The camp slowly takes shape. A junior officer comes by, counting ditches, checking depths, nodding or scowling. You get a nod. You allow yourself a single blink of satisfaction, then keep digging. Once the trench is done, the earth is piled up into a berm. Stakes will be driven into it later. Sharpened wooden palisades, hauled on carts by oxen. You help unload the carts, carrying bundles of timber to the perimeter. They scratch your arms. You bleed, but it's superficial. You don't stop to dress it. It'll crust over. The tents go up next. Each contubernium knows where to go. The layout of the camp is precise, like a miniature city. Officers sleep on the inner edge, near the command tents. Higher ranks get extra canvas, better rope, a guard rotation. You get 4 stakes and a shared pole. You help pitch the tent, stretching the leather over the lines, hammering it into the earth. The leather is stiff with sweat, dirt, and mold from years of use. It smells like animals. You smooth out the bedrolls inside. Straw mats, barely thick enough to soften the ground. A horn sounds, not a war signal, but a mealtime one. You sit with your contubernium around a circle of flat stones. One man produces a handful of lentils. Another has onions. You contribute a strip of dried meat. Together it makes a stew, boiled in the same pot you've carried since sunrise. The fire is weak. You don't care. The food is hot, and you're ravenous. You eat in silence, mostly. One man tells a joke about a Gaul, a priest, and a pack mule. It's funny only because you're all too tired to think. Someone else mutters about a dream he had, being back in the Subura with 2 women and a full amphora of wine. Everyone laughs, including you, but quietly. The stew is gone quickly. You wipe the pot clean with crusty bread. No scrap is wasted. You pass the cup of watered vinegar around. It tastes of metal. You drink it anyway. Evening comes fast in the north. The shadows lengthen. A thin fog creeps from the woods. Torches are lit. The scent of pitch and wood smoke fills the camp. Night watch assignments are called out. Your name is not among them. Tonight, a small mercy. You check your weapons. The gladius is sharp. The scutum is dented but serviceable. You polish your helmet with a bit of cloth. It catches the firelight like old gold. Then comes final duty, latrine digging. Not glamorous, but necessary. The designated area is outside the wall, in a diagonal trench cut deep into the soil. You and 2 others take spades and head out. You dig in silence, the earth cool and damp. When it's done, you mark it with a single pine bough stuck into the mound. A crude signal, but everyone knows what it means. By the time you return, the camp has settled. The soundscape has shifted. No more clanging, no more shouting. Just the low murmur of fires, the soft rustle of tents, and the occasional cough. A soldier plays a reed pipe near the command tent. A dog barks at something in the trees. Distant, non-threatening. You enter your tent. The air inside is close and musty. You remove your belt and cloak. You fold your tunic neatly. Regulations require it, and place your sandals beside your bedroll. Your body is sore, your hands blistered, but there is a rhythm to this life. You have built it yourself, literally, every night. You feel tired, but not defeated. You lie down, letting the exhaustion spread across you like another layer of canvas. Outside, someone is softly snoring. Someone else hums an old Legion song. You think of Rome, of roads that stretch to the horizon, of victories carved into stone, of names that last longer than flesh. But mostly, you think about tomorrow, because it will be the same. March, dig, eat, sleep, and somewhere in that rhythm, you survive. You wake up before dawn again, not because anyone calls for you, but because your body is conditioned to it. A natural alarm formed by weeks of identical routines. The chill of morning air has settled into your bones, and your limbs creak as you sit upright on the straw mat. It's still dark, with only the faint glow of embers outside the tent. A legionary doesn't get many dreams. The ones you do have are often interrupted by watch shifts, nearby arguments, or your own aching shoulder. But last night was quiet. No alarms, no sudden weather, no whispers of barbarian movement in the woods. You fold your bedding, roll it, and pack it with the same measured care as yesterday and the day before. Every action is efficient. Pack the tools, tighten the straps, bind the pole. Don't forget the tent pegs. Again and again. Routine is your protection, your shelter. The man who forgets his mattock today might be the man without a ditch tomorrow. Outside, the camp stirs to life like a breathing animal. Flames are fed, armor is strapped on, voices emerge. A centurion's silhouette stands tall by the edge of camp, watching the line form. His vine staff thumps rhythmically against his boot. You don't need to hear him yell. You just need to see him there. You rub your shoulder. It's sore from the pole's weight. The furka cuts in deeper with each mile, no matter how much cloth. You wrap around it. You hoist it anyway. The pack sways as you fall into formation. Another day of marching awaits. The camp you built yesterday will disappear within the hour. Roman legions do not linger. When they move, they leave behind the faint outlines of ditches and scorched grass. Nothing more. A few charred fire pits, boot prints if it hasn't rained. That's all. Even the latrines are filled in. You begin to walk again. The road stretches ahead, straight as a sword. You helped build part of it, laying stones in a grid and tamping them flat with the heels of your boots. You take a small pride in that. Every mile covered is a legacy, however invisible. The march is quieter today. The men around you are more tired, or maybe just focused. Every few miles, the formation rotates. Those in front move to the rear to rest slightly. Those in back take the lead. No one speaks unless necessary. The sounds are simple. Feet on stone, leather creaking, distant birds, the occasional low grunt from a mule dragging a cart of supplies. Around noon, you pass a group of locals, Germanic villagers standing at the edge of the forest. They watch silently, eyes fixed on the column. You keep your eyes forward. You're not here to provoke, just to exist. Still, your hand brushes the hilt of your gladius out of habit. The march slows. A wheel has broken on one of the supply carts, and it takes 3 men to lift it while another wedges a rock beneath. You take the chance to sit, just for a moment. You drink the rest of your vinegar water. It's warm now and tastes faintly of iron, but it wets your throat. You chew a piece of dried fruit from yesterday's rations. It's tough but sweet. You savor it. Then, another trumpet. Back on your feet. You march past forests, streams, crumbling waymarkers from earlier campaigns. Some bear old Latin inscriptions, names of commanders long dead, units now disbanded. You wonder if your name will ever be etched on one of these. Probably not. But the roads will remain. The sun begins to lower. It hangs like a coin above the treetops. You can feel the tension shift across the line, men sensing the approach of another camp. You scan the horizon for that clearing, that red cloth on a pole, that signal. But not yet. First, an order to halt. The Legion sets, up in a defensive stance. Scouts have reported movement nearby, possibly nothing, possibly something. You kneel behind your shield, one knee to the ground, shoulder pressed against the curve of the scutum. You draw your gladius and hold it downward, point near your sandal. This posture is not glamorous. It's not heroic, but it's practiced. You wait like this for nearly an hour. The ache in your thighs becomes a burning thread. The weight of the shield numbs your arm. Your grip on the sword loosens, tightens, loosens again. But still you hold. Eventually a horn sounds. The scouts return. No contact. The march resumes. You breathe, but do not relax. Roman legions are trained to carry anxiety like another item in the pack, always present, never visible. At last, the signal comes. A new clearing, a new camp, another trench, another wall, another stew, another night. You build it again, just as before. You dig with less energy, but more muscle memory. You don't speak, neither do the others. You cook, eat, wipe the bowl, clean. Check your boots for cracks. Brush the dirt from your cloak and sit for a brief moment beneath a pine. You look at your hands. They're calloused, cracked, stained with pitch and soil. These are the hands of a survivor. Not a farmer, not a senator, a soldier. You hear distant laughter from another tent. Someone telling a story about a lucky dice roll in a Popina months. Ego. It feels like a different world. You settle in. Tomorrow, you'll march again. The road will stretch ahead. The burden will sit on your shoulder. The ditch will be dug. The stew will boil. And history, silent and slow-moving, will continue to pass beneath your boots. You may not be remembered by name, but the roads, the camps, the invisible scars of your routine, they will last. And in Rome, that's what it means to matter. You enter through a wide arched doorway into the baths of Caracalla, one of the grandest public thermae in Rome. The marble glints in the sunlight. Everything is built to impress. Towering columns, carved niches, mosaic floors, and water. So much water. To an outsider, it all looks effortless, luxurious, divine. But you're not an outsider. You're part of the Balneator class, one of hundreds of men whose job is to keep this elaborate bathing machine running. Not a senator reclining in the caldarium. Not a merchant closing a deal in the tepidarium. You are the one who cleans, scrapes, hauls, and, above all, shovels. You arrive before dawn, before the noblemen and the scribes, before the scholars and the boys with their tutors. The great furnaces must already be crackling by the time they step through the doors. Your first stop is the hypocostum, the underfloor heating system. It's ingenious. Warm air flows beneath the floors, heating them evenly, radiating through the walls and into the pools. It's also a choking nightmare. The space is low, the air thick, and the soot clings to your lungs. You duck inside with an oil lamp and a damp cloth wrapped around your nose. You shovel in charcoal and wood, feeding the fire that breathes warmth into the caldarium above. You emerge sweating and blackened. You wipe your forehead with the hem of your tunic. It leaves a gray streak across your face. No matter. No one will notice. No one looks at the balneater unless something breaks. Next comes the water. The baths are supplied by the Aqua Marcia, one of the empire's mightiest aqueducts. Water flows into reservoirs and cisterns above the building, then down into the frigidarium, tepidarium, and caldarium in turn. Your job is to monitor the balance, make sure no room floods, no temperature spikes, no drain backs up. You keep an eye on the lead pipes, tapping them with a wooden rod to hear if the flow is normal. Yes, the pipes are made of lead. Yes, you know it makes people sick. No, you cannot change that. You learned long ago that questioning the system doesn't stop it. It just gets you replaced. As the sun rises, the first visitors arrive. They come in cliques, senators with perfumed beards, young men flaunting new sandals, veterans with stiff joints. Some come to bathe, others to gossip. A few just want to be seen. They pass you without a glance. One drops a fig from his pouch. You wait until he rounds the corner before scooping it up. It's not theft if no one saw it fall. You tend the strigil, station next. This is where bathers scrape oil and dirt from their bodies with curved metal blades. Most do it themselves, but the wealthy demand attendance. Sometimes that's you. You hold the strigil in one hand, a small oil flask in the other, and rub it over hairy backs and pale shoulders. You're paid in tips, mostly a few bronze coins. Once a man gave you a slice of honeyed bread. You remember that day like a holiday. Occasionally, a bather bleeds, scraping too hard. A pimple ruptures. A mole scrapes off. You're expected to wipe it up without comment. You carry a damp rag for this purpose. You learn not to flinch. The caldarium is the hardest. It's sweltering inside. Steam clouds the ceiling, and the floor is almost too hot to stand on. You step lightly. Your sole's already toughened from years of this work. You refill amphorae from the heated cisterns, haul them across the floor, and tip them into sunken baths. The elite love it scorching. You've seen men faint in here, face first, into the water, limbs slack. You and another worker always fish them out. Sometimes they tip afterward. Sometimes they don't. Once, a man died. Heart too weak. You were told not to speak of it. Later in the day, the barbers arrive. They set up, near the frigidarium, offering haircuts and plucking services. The shrieks of clients being dehaired echo through the corridors. You sweep up the fallen curls with a reed broom. Some are dark, some are gray, some are lice-ridden. You learn not to react. By midday, the baths are at their peak. Hundreds of people rotate through the rooms. The noise is relentless. Laughter, splashing, arguments, debates, songs. You move between them like a ghost, replacing oil jars, brushing mosaic floors, adjusting the furnace. You carry buckets of ash to the waste pits behind the complex. You fetch more charcoal from the storehouse. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your arms ache. Your lungs are tight. No one notices. And when they do, it's usually to complain. The water is too cool. The floor is too slippery. The oil smells odd. You nod, bow slightly, fix what can be fixed, and disappear again. You eat your midday meal in a small corner room behind the tepidarium. A fig, a heel of bread, and some wine cut with water. It's quiet here. You sit on a stone ledge, watching. Condensation drip from the walls. You know every inch of this place. Every crack in the tile, every hiss of steam, every warped door hinge. This bathhouse is your city. But to them, you're invisible. Your break lasts 10 minutes. Then you're up again, brushing leaves out of the atrium pool, scraping oil scum off the walls, whispering apologies as you navigate crowds. Later, when the afternoon crowd arrives, the air will thicken. You'll see a senator argue with his barber. You'll help an old man out of the plunge pool. You'll mop up spilled wine someone smuggled in past the attendants. And you will not stop. Not until the last visitor leaves. But the day isn't over yet. The sun begins to dip behind the marble rooftops of the city, and the patrons slowly start to trickle out. The shift is gradual. The young men leave first, off to dinner or poetry readings. Then the merchants. Then the senators and their attendants. A few linger, soaking in the last of the steam. Their fingers pruned, their skin glowing from oil and heat. You are still working. The baths do not shut themselves down. The moment the final guest leaves, the real work begins. You and the other. Balneatores fall into quiet synchronization. It's not talked about. It doesn't need to be. Everyone knows what has to be done and where to go. This rhythm, this exhausting, precise, invisible rhythm, is the heartbeat of the Thermae. Your first task is the frigidarium. The cold pool needs to be skimmed. Dead skin, hair, bits of wax, stray leaves, and worse. Everything floats in a quiet layer across the once pristine water. You skim it with a wide wicker scoop, moving methodically, silently. The pool is vast, and your hands numb from the chill, but it must be done. Then come the benches. You brush off crumbs, scrape away hardened oil, gather discarded cloths. You find a bronze ring wedged between two flagstones, someone's careless loss. You pocket it, not to steal, but to return. A lost item brought back earns goodwill, sometimes even a coin. Next is the floor. Roman bathhouse floors are art, mosaics of fish, dolphins, gods, and geometric wonders, all laid tile by tiny tile. But they are slippery with oils and ash now. You mop them with a long cloth soaked in vinegar water. The smell stings your nose. The cloth is heavy, and your back is already sore from bending over the pools all day. You pause briefly and stretch. There's no time to rest properly, but if you don't loosen your spine now, you'll be limping tomorrow. Then, into the tepidarium. This is the room you like best. It's warm but not scorching. The air smells faintly of lavender from someone's bath oil. It's quiet here, echoing now with emptiness. You light a small oil lamp to inspect the walls. No visible cracks. Good. The last time one appeared, a whole section of plaster had to be pulled down and replaced overnight. You worked until sunrise that day. You take a dull cloth and begin wiping condensation from the benches and walls. If left overnight, the moisture breeds mold. And if mold appears, the supervisor blames the workers, not the architects. A fellow balneator joins you in the next room, dumping ashes from the Hippocaust furnace into a clay pit. The ash pile is black, smoking, and sticky with grease. His hands are gray to the wrist. You know how they'll smell tomorrow, like burnt olives and soot. You nod at him in passing. You both know better than to talk. Talking slows hands. You move into the caldarium last. It's still hot, almost unbearable. The residual heat from the furnace seeps from the floor, the walls, the pool. You wipe sweat from your forehead with your forearm. The water is cloudy, full of oils and dirt. You'll need to drain it halfway and scrub the edge with a stone brush. You kneel and begin. Your hands disappear into the steaming water as you scour the rim. The stone is slippery. Bits of skin and oils peel away with each pass. You don't think about what's in the water. You stopped thinking about that years. Ego somewhere behind you, another worker is cleaning the strigil station. You hear the clang of metal on stone as the curved blades are laid out to dry. Occasionally, the superintendent walks through, just once, maybe twice. He doesn't say much. If you're doing your work, he walks by. If not, he makes a note. A single mark on a wax tablet can mean losing your shift for a week. You always make sure he passes without pause. As you finish scrubbing the final ledge of the caldarium, the sky outside dims to a deep violet. The light inside now comes only from small clay lamps nestled in the corners of each room. Their flames flicker gently. The shadows stretch. At last, someone calls out from the far end of the building. "That's it." The words float over the stone and steam like a blessing. You put away your tools, each one carefully cleaned and returned to its place. A cracked strigil is set aside for repair. A broken amphora is hauled to the disposal yard. You roll up the rags, rinse your arms, and wring out the cloth with trembling hands. Then comes the final ritual. A plunge. Not all workers do it, but you do. You step quietly to the frigidarium and lower yourself into the icy water. It's clean, now skimmed and settled. The shock hits you like a javelin, but it clears your mind. You sit waist deep for a moment, eyes closed, letting the day slip off your skin. Then you rise, dress, and step outside. The streets are dark. The marble behind you still glows faintly in the moonlight. You walk home with a slow, even pace. Your tunic is damp. Your feet are sore. You smell like vinegar, smoke, and olive oil. But you did your job. Tomorrow, it will begin again. And no one, not the senators, not the merchants, not even the emperor, will know how much work it took just to let them sit in comfort and steam. But the baths will be ready because you were here. You return to the baths just after dawn the next day. The sky is pale blue and Rome has barely stirred. A pigeon coos from a ledge above the atrium. The marble steps are still cool. You pause briefly before entering. You always do. The building looks almost holy in the morning, quiet, looming, impossible to fully comprehend, like a temple to sweat, soap, and social status. Inside, the silence is absolute. There's a moment before work begins when the entire structure feels like it's holding its breath. No voices, no splashes, no heat. Just still water and cold stone. You relish this moment. In your own way, it's the cleanest part of your job. Then you strike flint against steel and light the first lamp. The fire catches, and the day begins again. The routine is familiar. Charcoal to the furnace. Water checks in the cistern. The pipes moan like tired animals as pressure builds. The hypocaustum groans to life, exhaling its warmth. You crouch low in the tunnels, watching the coals glow orange. You adjust airflow with a worn paddle, soot sticking to your knuckles. This is what keeps the heat balanced, keeps the floors warm, keeps the patrons happy. You wonder, as you often do, what would happen if it stopped? If no one showed up to light the fire, if the mosaic floors grew cold, if the pools dried up, the walls went dark, the voices faded. Would the senators clean their own strigils? Would the merchants fetch their own buckets of olive oil? Would anyone even remember how to drain the frigidarium? You doubt it. But then again, the baths have always depended on those who vanish before the first guest arrives. Builders, attendants, diggers, fire feeders, sweepers, scrubbers. Your father was one. You are one. And if your son wants the job, he'll have to learn the same rhythms you did. How to clean a bath without disturbing the mosaic. How to avoid slipping on perfumed oils. How to fake a smile when someone snaps their fingers at you. You finish, lighting the lamps, and by the time the second hour rings, the first patrons arrive. They're always early, always expecting warmth and service. And thanks to you, they get it. The day passes like the last. Steam, sweat, skin, sandals. You lose track of time. You eat your meal in the same cracked bowl, with the same lentils and the same vinegar wine. You nod to the same co-worker. You scrape the same patch of tile where someone always spills oil. You haul buckets. You dump ash. You mop footprints and hair and water and worse. But today, something small changes. An old man drops a copper coin into your hand. Not a tip, but thanks. "The water's clean," he says. "You boys do good work." You nod in return. You don't speak. You know better. But inside, the comment lodges like a warm ember. It's rare to be acknowledged at all. At the end of the day, you perform one last chore. The superintendent has asked you to carry a broken amphora to the disposal yard outside the city gate. It's heavy, cracked down one side, still dripping olive oil. You cradle it with both arms, pressing it against your chest. It leaks slowly, leaving a dark line down your tunic. You walk through the city as the sun begins to fall, carrying a broken vessel of someone else's comfort. Along the way, you pass a boy selling wax tablets, a woman spinning wool, a butcher sweeping bones off the stoop. Everyone is working. No one sees you. No one asks what you're carrying. No one asks where you're going, but it doesn't matter, because tomorrow, when the baths open again, and the mosaic glows in the morning light, and the pools steam with new heat, your work will be there. Not your name, not your story, but your hands, your routine, your rhythm. And in 1,000 years, someone will dig up these baths and marvel at the luxury, the domes, the art, the engineering, and they will wonder who built them, who cleaned them, who kept them alive. They won't know your name, but you'll have been there, in the floors, in the walls, in the silence before the first lamp was lit. You wake to the sound of a goat bleating outside your window. Not a window exactly, just a square cut in the wall, shuttered with worn wooden planks. The sun hasn't fully risen, but your body knows the time. The coals in your hearth have gone, cold. The house smells of straw, dust, and the lingering aroma of boiled cabbage. You're a Roman peasant, a free citizen by law, though that rarely matters. Your life is rural, rough, and almost entirely centered around food. Or more accurately, the pursuit of it. Today is Dole Day. You pull on your tunic, the same one you've worn all week. It's patched at the shoulder, stained at the hem. Your feet slip into sandals made from rope and pigskin. They'll last another month, maybe. You splash water from a clay basin onto your face and tie your belt. There's no time for lingering. Grain Day always draws a crowd. Your wife is already outside, sweeping dust from the small stone path. She nods at you, but doesn't speak. She's saving her voice for the queue. She'll need it to bargain for extra oil if the merchant is in a forgiving mood. Your home is one of dozens dotting the edge of a farm estate, technically owned by a senator you've never seen. You lease your land in exchange for labor and a portion of your harvest. You grow mostly beans and cabbage, barley when the soil is kind. But your lifeline is grain, wheat if you're lucky. That's what keeps your family fed. The Roman state doles out grain to eligible citizens. You're one of them, just barely. You earned the right through years of service, taxes paid, and paperwork filed at the local census office, most of which you couldn't read. A traveling scribe helped, for a copper coin and a hunk of cheese. You grab a small basket lined with straw and begin walking toward the village center. It's a few miles, uphill most of the way. Your neighbor, an older man, with a crooked back, falls into step beside you. He grumbles about his knee. You nod and grunt in agreement. Words are sparse in the morning. By the time you arrive, the line has already formed. Dozens of peasants, women with children, old men, stooped workers still smelling of smoke and sweat, all waiting for the magistrate to open the granary and hand out the day's measure. A modius of grain, about 6.5 kilograms, enough for bread, porridge, and, if stretched cleverly, a celebratory flat cake on feast days. You shuffle forward inch by inch. Someone complains that the last grain batch was full of pebbles. Another mutters that the scale is rigged. You don't. Join in. You've learned not to call attention to yourself. Quiet men get grain. Loud men get overlooked, or worse, told to come back tomorrow. Finally, it's your turn. You step up, place your basket on the scale, and nod at the magistrate's assistant. He's a young man, probably the son of someone important. His tunic is clean, his sandals unscuffed. He scoops the grain from a wooden crate into your basket, eyes half-lidded, mouth chewing lazily on something sweet. When he finishes, you thank him. He doesn't reply. You step away and check the grain. It looks good. Golden, not too dusty. Minimal weevils. You'll still sift it, but it could have been worse. On your way back, you stop at the olive seller's cart. He's cutting deals today. Pressed. Oil from last harvest, mixed with herbs and a bit of vinegar. Your wife joins you with a few spare coins, scraped together from mending tunics and sewing sacks. You barter. He relents. You leave with a small jar, barely a cupful, but enough to flavor the week. Back home, you set the grain in the storeroom, a cool, shaded corner lined with clay jars and a stone pestle. Your wife gets to work. She sifts the grain by hand, sorting out pebbles and husks, then rinses it with well water. The children help, giggling as they pick out bits of straw. Lunch will be porridge. You grind the grain slowly, rhythmically, on the quernstone. It's hard work, arms straining, wrists sore, but necessary. The fine flour is mixed with water and boiled in a pot over a fire built from dried cow dung and olive twigs. The smell is earthy, a little sour, but comforting. You eat sitting on the floor, a shared bowl between you all. No one gets a spoon. You use bits of bread from yesterday, stale but serviceable, to scoop the porridge. You chew slowly. It fills your stomach, even if it doesn't excite your tongue. Afterward, your wife begins kneading the dough for tonight's bread. She mixes more flour with water and a pinch of salt saved from a previous trade. There's no yeast, not always, available, so the bread will be dense. She sets it near the hearth to warm, covered with a cloth embroidered by her mother. A lucky charm. You step outside and check your garden. The beans are coming in slowly this year. The cabbage looks yellowed, at the edges. You mutter to yourself, wipe your hands on your tunic, and inspect the fencing. A goat escaped last week and chewed half a row of barley. You reinforced it with twine and thorns. So far, it's held. The sun rises higher. You feel its heat on your shoulders, the tightness in your lower back, the familiar sense of fatigue that comes not from a single task, but from a lifetime of repetition. Grind, boil, bake, dig, repeat. But there's dignity in this. You have grain, you have bread, you have family. You may not feast, but you will not starve. Not this week. And yet, even as you scrape the last crumbs from your bowl, a thought lingers. What happens when the grain doesn't come? The next week arrives with heat, the kind that settles into your bones and makes even the air feel heavy. The well runs low. The bread cracks more easily. The goats bleat louder, and the grain does not come. Word spreads quietly through the village. The shipment from Ostia is delayed. Something about storms, in the harbor, or maybe a bureaucratic error. No one really knows. All you know is that when you walk the miles to the granary and line up with your basket in hand, the magistrate's assistant steps onto the porch and announces, "No grain today, come back tomorrow." But tomorrow, they say the same. And again, the day after that. You return home with an empty basket and a belly that feels like it's shrinking. The children ask when the porridge is coming. Your wife shrugs without speaking and starts slicing onions into hot water. Onion broth again. You chew the stringy pieces like meat, then wipe your mouth and pretend it was enough. The olive oil is gone by midweek. The last of it was used to soften a barley cake that turned to stone overnight. You shared it at breakfast, more chewing than swallowing. The flatbread scratched your throat going down. Still, you're grateful for it. You try not to complain. Complaining draws attention, and attention, you've learned, is rarely helpful. On the third day without grain, you visit a neighbor. He has an old millstone and a few sacks of spelt left from last harvest. He's reluctant to share, says his brother's family is due to visit and they'll need the food. But he gives you a small scoop, enough for a few pancakes. In exchange, you help him patch a crumbling wall and fetch water from the stream too, miles away. Your wife bakes the spelt cakes on a flat stone near the fire. They're chewy and sour. Your youngest daughter refuses to eat them at first, then gives in when her stomach growls. You eat slowly, eyes fixed on the fire. You know the rhythm is breaking. You start to hear the same stories in every household. That the scale at the granary was fixed the last time it was open. That certain families are getting double shares because they're friends with the magistrate. That grain was sold out the back of the storehouse to merchants on the side. You say nothing. You've heard it all before. The grain system, like every Roman system, is elegant on paper and flawed in practice. It promises equality, but delivers randomness. On a good day, your family eats well. On a bad one, your wife boils. Weeds. And today is a bad one. Your garden offers some hope. The beans are nearly ready. You pick the first small handful and lay them on a cloth in the sun. They'll be boiled tonight with lentils and garlic. A small feast if you pretend hard enough, but it won't last. You consider traveling into the city itself. Rome is far, but there are more granaries, more merchants, more chances. But you'd need time. You'd need strength. You'd need someone to watch the children and the goats and the cabbage. Your wife shakes her head at the idea. They'll have it tomorrow, she says. You nod, though you don't believe it. Instead, you walk to the nearby temple of Ceres. It's not a large temple, just a small stone altar under a fig tree. You bring a cup of water and a few crumbs as offering. You light a bit of dried sage and mutter a prayer. Not because you expect an answer, but because your father did the same when times were thin. The priest is there. He's trimming vines from the shrine wall. He doesn't look at you. You don't look at him. But as you place your offering, he clears his throat and says, "The port will reopen soon. They say by the next full moon." It's a kind of hope. You bring the news back to your wife. She nods once and returns to sorting beans. Your eldest son is trying to make shoes out of a cracked leather sack. You pretend not to notice that he's wrapped his stomach in cloth to quiet the hunger pangs. That night, you eat early. A small bowl of barley mash, some wild greens, and the last bit of dried fish scraped from the corner of a jar. It's not satisfying, but it's something. You lie on your straw mat that night with a headache. You're not sick, just underfed. Your bones feel too close to the skin. Your mouth is dry even though you drank water before bed. You hear your wife coughing in her sleep. You think about the port, the storm, the ship with the grain, the men unloading it, the scale at the granary, the assistant with his lazy eyes and perfect sandals, and you wonder, how long does a system like this last? But that thought is too big, too distant. So instead, you ask the question every Roman peasant must ask. During a long, thin week, what can I feed my family tomorrow? The news comes with the bells. At first, you think it's just the noon hour ringing from the village tower. But then comes shouting, distant but clear. Laughter, the kind of loud, surprised laughter people only make when something goes right that they had stopped expecting. You step outside, squinting into the light. Your wife is already walking up the path toward the road. Her pace is quick, basket in hand. She doesn't say anything, but you know the look in her eyes. The grain is here. You join the others heading toward the granary. Neighbors, barefoot. Children, farmers with dust still clinging to their knees. Some are carrying sacks, others hold baskets bound in twine, repurposed goat skins, anything that can carry weight. One man drags a cloth sack behind him like a sled. When you reach the center, it's chaos. A small cart sits parked at the granary gate. 2 oxen chew lazily beneath it, their reins looped loosely on a hitching post. The cart is stacked high with sacks of grain, fresh, golden, smelling faintly of salt and harbor rot. A young boy scrambles up and down, helping unload them one by one. Behind the cart stands the magistrate's assistant. Same clean tunic, same polished sandals. But now, a soldier is beside him. A young legionary, not from this village. He watches the crowd with a spear across his chest. A quiet reminder that this time, things are to be done properly. You line up without being told. The crowd is tired but cooperative. No one wants to be sent home again. When it's your turn, you step forward, basket in hand. The assistant measures out a full modius, not a handful short, not a pebble mixed in. The scale reads evenly. He nods, and you step away. You exhale. It's heavier than you remembered. Back home, the air changes. Your wife sifts the grain like it's gold dust. She smiles as she works. Your daughter dips her fingers into the pile and draws shapes. Your son carries a jar of well water to soak the first handful for tomorrow's porridge. Tonight, you bake. It's a proper loaf this time. Not just barley mash or ash cakes, but actual wheat bread. Your wife kneads the dough on the table, singing, under her breath. You build the fire carefully, feeding it with dry twigs and bits of olive wood. The scent fills the room like memory. The loaf bakes slowly, rising, browning, cracking along the top just right. When it's done, you slice it thick. Each person gets a piece. Still warm, steaming at the center. Soft enough to tear, strong enough to dip. You eat in silence, save for the crunching crust and the occasional sigh. There's still no meat, no cheese, no imported garum sauce. But this feels like a feast, and it doesn't stop there. Over the next few days, the garden finally gives more than just promise. The beans mature. You harvest cabbage, boil it with herbs, and serve it with spiced grain mash. Your wife barters the leftover lentils for a few eggs. You scramble them over fire with bitter greens. The children play again, louder now. Laughter echoes inside the house for the first time in weeks. You take note of how different things feel, not in comfort, but in rhythm. Your hands return to the millstone with something like purpose. Your wife begins mending the old tunics again, humming as she patches. You check the roof thatch, the goat pen, the fence. There's still much to do. There's always much to do. But now you can do it with food in your belly. Still, you do not forget. You remember the ache of those thin days. The worry, the shame of bringing home an empty basket. The way your child pressed her palm to her stomach and said nothing. You remember the priest's words, the rumors, the hope held together by habit. And you know it will happen again. Rome is vast, but fragile. Its ports clog. Its roads flood. Its officials forget. The system turns on wheels greased with hope and delay. But you've lived long enough to understand that survival isn't about justice. It's about repetition. Plant the seeds, grind the grain, boil the mash, bake the bread, feed the children, and wait. You step outside one evening just as the sun is slipping low. The fields look golden. The dirt smells rich. You wipe your hands on your tunic and watch the sky change color. A neighbor waves from his fence, holding up a loaf of his own, freshly baked. You raise your hand in return, not in celebration, but in quiet acknowledgement. You both endured. The grain will run out again someday. But for now, you chew slowly. You rest your feet. You sleep without hunger. And in the morning, you will rise with the others and start the rhythm again. Grind, boil, bake, repeat. The floors are cold long before the sun rises. You know this by feel. Not because your master tells you to wake early, but because your feet tell you the moment they touch the tiles. You are a domestic slave in the house of Lucius Vibullius Maro, a senator of respectable lineage. You were not born here. You were bought in Sicilia at the age of 9. You are 23 now. You sleep in a corner of the kitchen on a mat of bundled reeds, wrapped in a wool cloak that smells faintly of olive oil and ash. You are the first to rise. The atrium is still cloaked in darkness. The coals in the hearth just dim embers. You move without a lamp, muscle memory guiding your steps. First, the fire. Always the fire. You crouch by the brazier and coax the embers back to life using dried fig leaves and breath. A spark, a glow, and then the crackle of flame. The kitchen smells of barley, smoke, and the faint iron tang of the cleaver hung by the wall. You slice yesterday's bread into strips and soak them in watered-down milk for the household dogs. They're old, pampered beasts, allowed more leniency than some of the staff. You ladle the mixture into a bowl and slide it beside the threshold where they sleep. One of them snorts. The other stays curled. You turn your attention to the water. Jars. There are 6 of them, clay, wide-mouthed, lined against the eastern wall. You check each one, noting which are full, which need refilling. You lift one onto your shoulder. It's heavier than expected. Your balance shifts, but you steady it with your chin and begin walking. The well is at the rear of the house, near the garden. It's still dark, but the sky has begun to bleed from black to blue. You draw the water carefully, tipping the rope without splashing. The sound of the bucket rising, creaking, sloshing, is the first music of the morning. Inside, the rest of the household begins to stir. You hear the light tread of Livia, the housemaid assigned to your master's wife. She moves like a ghost, careful and exact. The two of you rarely speak, though you've worked side by side for years. She has her duties. You have yours. You set the table in the tablinum for the master's breakfast. Olives, bread, goat cheese, and figs when in season. Nothing too indulgent. The family eats simply in the morning. You arrange each item on a clay dish, spacing them evenly as you've been trained. You wipe the table with a cloth dampened from the well and polished with a dry linen until it shines. The master's wife enters just after the 4th hour. You bow your head, but do not speak. She is wrapped in a deep blue stola, her hair already pinned and curled by Livia. Her footsteps are light, rehearsed, even her size carefully placed. She glances at the food and sits, not a word. You back away as expected. Soon after, Lucius himself appears. He smells of oil and parchment. He scratches at his beard as he enters, then pauses briefly at the table. "Warm the bread," he mutters. You bow and obey. The small bread oven is already lit. You slide 2 loaves inside, wait just long enough for the crust to crisp, and remove them with a long wooden paddle. You place them gently on the table, slice halfway through, and pour a stream of olive oil over each. He begins eating without a second glance. You do not eat with them. You will eat later, in the kitchen, on a low stool, once the morning frenzy has passed. Your breakfast will be barley mash, likely cold. Perhaps a date if one of the children drops it. As the morning stretches, the villa comes alive. The steward checks the ledger. The gardener waters the laurel bushes. The tutor arrives for the children. You run errands between chambers, fetching scrolls, lighting lamps, carrying messages from one end of the house to the other. You are everywhere and nowhere. Your footsteps echo across the mosaic floors. You speak only when spoken to. There is a rhythm to this, not peaceful, but predictable. You have seen other slaves, field workers, quarry diggers, gladiators. Their rhythm is one of survival. Yours is of invisibility. You're not beaten often. Lucius prides himself on being humane. He says this when guests visit. They're treated well, he says, waving a hand, as part of the household. And in a way, you are. But you are also property. Your name was changed years ago. You don't use the old one. You don't think of it much. You don't write it. You do not write at all. Reading is for others, children, tutors, senators. You are eyes and hands and footsteps. You do remember your mother's singing voice, though. It comes back to you sometimes, in the quiet before the fire catches, or when you hear the wind whistling through the atrium at dusk. A tune with no words, just hums. You hum it now and then, softly, under your breath, when no one's near. At midday, the family gathers for the main meal. You'll help prepare it, boiling lentils, seasoning meat, slicing boiled eggs into neat halves. You'll stand beside the table as they eat, waiting for a nod or a raised hand. You'll refill wine cups, clear crumbs, fetch fruit from the storeroom. And when it ends, you'll return to the kitchen and eat your own meal from a clay bowl by the hearth. No conversation. Just steam and quiet, and the faint scent of herbs. You will not be praised. You will not be thanked. But for now, the morning still stretches ahead. And you, quiet, trained, invisible, have much to do before the house fully wakes. By the 6th hour, the household is in motion. The quiet stillness of the morning has vanished, replaced by a steady hum of tasks, footsteps, and voices kept just below a shout. You move through the villa like a shadow, never central, never noticed, yet always present. Your master, Lucius Vibullius Maro, has returned from the forum. He is frustrated. You can tell by the way he tosses his scrolls onto the table without care and mutters at the corners of the room. No one speaks to him. The steward takes the hint and disappears into the garden. You quietly refill Lucius' wine cup, holding the jug with both hands, the way you were taught. He doesn't look at you. His wife is with guests in the triclinium, 2 women from another senator's house, both wrapped in gauzy tunics and dripping with conversation. You can't hear much, only snippets about someone's cousin marrying below their station, and a dispute about embroidery patterns. You refill their bowls with grapes and cheese, keeping your eyes lowered. They speak around you, not to you. It's as if you're a wall or a piece of furniture, a tray with feet. Later, in the courtyard, you're sent to assist the tutor. The children are learning rhetoric. You don't understand much of it. Phrases about justice, virtue, and the republic. You stand against a pillar while the older boy recites a speech, waving his arms dramatically. The younger one throws a reed pen at you. It bounces off your shoulder. He laughs. You do not react. The tutor frowns at the boy but says nothing. After their lessons, you help the children change into fresh tunics. The older one complains about the heat. The younger tries to put his head through a sleeve. You fix it quickly, tying the cord at his waist. He doesn't thank you. He never does. You return to the kitchen to prepare for the evening meal. Today is a semi-formal affair. 2 guests from the magistrate's office are expected. Lucius wants a fish. You fetch it from the cistern, still alive and sluggish. You clean it behind the courtyard well, gutting it neatly with a curved knife and rinsing the blood into the soil. You smell of salt and scales for the rest of the afternoon. The cook, an older slave named Hilarion, gives instructions. You like working under him. He is strict, but fair. He lets you taste the stew and shows you how to wrap fig leaves around stuffed olives. Sometimes he hums while he works, tuneless, but comforting. You prepare the dining room, setting out polished bronze plates and ceramic cups. You smooth the cushions, place garlands of rosemary around the lamps, and set out a dish of dates soaked in wine. You check each fork for tarnish. You light the lamps before dusk. Everything must be perfect, not for praise, but because errors cost you. The guests arrive just after sunset. You stand by the wall as they enter, middle-aged men with full bellies and half-truths in their voices. They clap Lucius on the shoulder, toast loudly, and complain about politics. You pour wine when their cups are low, remove platters when they are finished, replace bowls without interrupting their talk. They barely acknowledge you. Once, one of them does. He grabs your wrist as you lean forward to fill his cup. "Strong hands," he says, his breath thick with wine. "Where did this one come from, eh?" Lucius waves dismissively. "Sicilia, I think. Part of the grain auction. Useful boy." The man lets go and laughs. You step back, your wrist stinging, and return to your post. Dinner drags on. The guests stay late. You stand by the pillar, feet aching, neck stiff, listening to stories that drift from politics to money to infidelities. You stop keeping track of the number of times you pour wine. You focus on not dropping anything, on not being noticed. Eventually, the guests leave, their voices trailing into the street like spilled wine. You clean the table. You collect the bones, the crumpled napkins, the smeared platters. You carry them back to the kitchen, where Hilarion has already started the fire again to boil the dishwater. You scrub the plates with sand, your knuckles raw from the cold water and ash. You eat late, cold lentils, a bit of bread, a piece of burnt fish skin no one wanted. It tastes fine. Your stomach is too tired to argue. You sit on the edge of the hearth while the last embers glow red. Hilarion retires. The steward walks by with a ledger in hand, mumbling to himself. The house begins to fall still again. But your work isn't done. You make one last round through the villa, checking that the lamps are extinguished, that the animals are penned, that the doors are barred. You pause in the atrium and look up. The moonlight through the oculus casts a pale circle on the floor. You walk back to the kitchen and curl up on your mat. You don't own anything. No pillow, no blanket of your own. The tunic you wear belongs to the house. Even your name is theirs. But in this moment, brief, private, and without commands, you breathe, you close your eyes, you sleep. Not because you are ready, but because you must, because tomorrow the fire needs lighting before the household wakes. You dream lightly, not of freedom. Those dreams left you years ago, but of sound. The crackling hearth, sandals against marble, the clink of amphora lids. The rhythm of the house follows you even in sleep. You wake before the rooster. Your limbs ache from sleeping. On reeds, but there's no time to stretch. You rise, light the fire, and begin again. Bread dough is already resting on the kitchen table. Hilarion prepared it last night, and it's your task to bake it. You stoke the oven, dust the paddle with flour, and slide the loaves in. The scent builds slowly, mixing with the morning chill. The house begins to stir. The youngest child cries. His tunic itches. You retrieve another from the cedar chest, softer and freshly folded. The tutor arrives early. He nods at you and requests warm water for hand washing. You fetch it. You always fetch it. Lucius leaves for the forum by the 3rd hour. You hand him his scrolls, hold the door as he departs, and return to your chores without a word. His wife remains behind, instructing Livia to trim a new dress and send a message to her sister. You help carry the writing tablet and ink. You always do. As midday approaches, you pass the storeroom and pause. The shelves are full, not of luxury, but of abundance. Amphorae of oil, baskets of grain, dates wrapped in leaves, salted fish stacked in clay pots. It's enough to feed the household for weeks, and none of it is yours. You can touch it, prepare it, even carry it. For someone else, but never take. Once, years ago, another slave took a single fig. He thought no one saw. But someone always sees. He was whipped in the courtyard. The stains stayed on the stone for days. You remember that as clearly as your first steps in this house. After the noon meal, you're given an unusual task. Accompany your master's wife to the market. Livia is ill, and Lucius wants you to carry the goods instead. You walk 2 steps behind her through the streets of Rome, past vendors shouting in 4 languages, past beggars, past other slaves carrying bolts of cloth or amphorae of wine. You do not look at them. You do not speak. In the forum, your mistress buys a brooch, silver shaped like a dolphin. You carry the package. She does not thank you. She nods at a senator's wife across the square, adjusts her veil, and turns toward home. On the way back, she pauses at a fountain and lowers her cup to drink. You wait. An older woman, a freedwoman by the look of her, watches you from across the street. She smiles briefly. You look away. You've seen that smile before. It's not pity. It's recognition. She knows the weight you carry. Not the packages, not the errands, the quiet. When you return, the steward summons you to the atrium. A guest is expected tonight. A visiting rhetorician from Athens. Lucius wants everything precise. You help Hilarion prepare a dish of roasted duck with honeyed dates. It smells too sweet, the kind of food that tastes like coin, not hunger. You clean the serving dishes twice. You polish the bronze. You test the wine jugs for cracks. You scrape candle wax from the table. The children run past, laughing. One bumps into you and calls you a goat. You keep cleaning. As the evening fades into orange light, you place the serving trays on the table. The guest arrives in a dark blue cloak, quoting Virgil before he's even seated. You fill his cup. You keep your eyes low. Later, after the plates are cleared and the amphorae are empty, the guest remarks, "Your household is very disciplined, Maro. The staff, quiet, efficient." Lucius smiles. "I choose them carefully. You are in the room. You hear it, but it doesn't matter." You begin the night cleaning. Bones to the scraps jar, breadcrumbs to the chickens, wine stains to be scrubbed from the mosaic with vinegar and cloth. You scrape, sweep, polish. You return the good silver to the locked chest. You seal the amphorae. You stack the bowls. And then, when the last of the lamps is extinguished, you return to your corner. You sit on the mat of bundled reeds. Your hands are cracked from lie. Your shoulders ache from trays. You stretch your legs and close your eyes. The fire crackles beside you, a soft breath of warmth. And you think, not of rebellion or escape, or some imagined life in distant fields, but of what you've done. How many meals you've served. How many scrolls you've carried. How many times you've answered without speaking. Your life is not your own, but it is lived. You have outlasted 3 stewards, 2 tutors, and a dog. You have seen a child grow into a man. You have watched roses bloom and wilt in the garden year after year. You have survived. And tomorrow, before anyone else wakes, you'll light the fire again. You stand on the Via Appia just as the first light spills over the horizon. The stones beneath your feet are uneven, but smooth from centuries of sandals, wheels, and hooves. The road stretches in both directions, so straight it almost feels unnatural, a thin line dividing the world. You're not a merchant or a soldier. You're part of a small work crew employed by the curator Viarum, Rome's official road overseer. Your job isn't glorious. You don't conquer new lands or draft laws. You repair roads. You fix cracks. You shovel gravel into holes that reappear every spring. You scrape moss from drainage ditches. You maintain what others march on. Your shift begins at sunrise. Your team is small. 6 men, all citizens, all paid by the state. You're issued tools, mattocks, chisels, wooden frames for measuring width. You load the mule cart with stone chips and lime mortar and begin your assigned segment of the road, about 500 passus, roughly 3/4 of a mile. It will take most of the day. The first task is clearing debris. Wind has knocked branches across the path, and last night's storm has left puddles. You clear them methodically. You don't think about it too hard. You can't. The work is too repetitive. Then you inspect the curbstones. Large cretuli set, at each side to frame the road. One has shifted from erosion. You fetch the iron pry bar and wedge it loose, lever it up, and reset it. The process takes nearly half an hour. Your tunic is already soaked in sweat. Most travelers ignore you. A caravan rolls by. 3 ox-drawn carts piled high with amphorae. The driver mutters curses at the slope near the bridge and doesn't slow down. You move aside without complaint. One of the amphorae tilts dangerously, but doesn't fall. You don't mention it. If it breaks, it's not your problem. A pair of legionaries pass on foot. One of them nods at you. The other spits. You keep working. After debris comes resurfacing. The upper layer of summum dorsum, the paving stones, has begun to crack. You pry up a loose one and examine the sublayers. Beneath are tightly packed gravel, rudus, and crushed lime, statumen, just as Vitruvius prescribed. You spread new mortar, reseat the stone, and tamp it into place. It's exacting work. If the stone isn't level, wheels will rattle. If it's too high, water pools around it. And if you get it wrong too many times, the overseer notices. He's not far today, leaning on a post up the road, scratching his beard and pretending not to watch you. You can feel his eyes. You straighten your back. You measure twice. You press the edges with care. You break for water at the miliarium, a marble column marking the distance from Rome. This one reads Excates, 26 miles. It's weathered, lichen-covered, slightly tilted. You've seen it 100 times. It's like a quiet friend who never speaks, but is always exactly where you left them. The sun climbs higher. You scrape moss from a drainage channel using a flat iron blade. It's slow work. Your hands blister, even after years of doing this. The moss clings, wet and stubborn. You flick leeches into the grass. You've worked dozens of roads, Via Latina, Via Salaria, even a stint up north on the Via Flaminia. You know the feel of each one. Some roads whisper, others hum with movement. The Via Appia groans like old bones. By midday, the heat is dense and the air tastes of dust. You eat lunch by the side of the road. A small loaf of barley bread, a wedge of cheese, and a dried fig. You drink watered vinegar from a skin. Your legs cramp when you sit, so you don't linger. Back to work. You pour crushed stone into a depression, where the drainage has worn the edge. The wheel ruts are deepest near villages, where carts turn most often. You patch the stone with care. You mix lime with gravel and shovel it into the hollow. You flatten it with a mallet. You test it with your heel. Good enough. You see a young couple approaching on foot. They're arguing about something, money, perhaps, or family. You catch phrases but not meaning. They step around your tools without looking at you. You notice the woman's sandal strap has snapped. She walks with a limp. You want to offer twine, but you don't. You return to the curbstone. Another storm will come next week. You know this road won't stay flat. Nothing does. The genius of Roman roads isn't in their permanence. It's in their persistence. They are designed not to last untouched, but to be fixed, endlessly. And that's what you do. Measure, lift, tamp, sweep, step aside for carts. Nod at soldiers. Work under the sun. Repeat. There's a beauty to it, in a way. No applause, no medals. But when you walk home, you feel it. the smooth stone beneath your feet, freshly set, and you know you made that happen. The next morning begins. The same way, with the scrape of shovel on stone. You and the crew gather at the tool shed before sunrise. It's nothing more than a timber lean-to beside a fig grove, stocked with picks, pry bars, mallets, and measuring frames. You eat a quick meal, half a barley roll, dipped in oil, and take your place beside the cart. The mule snorts, unimpressed. You don't blame it. Today, like every day, is predictable. You're assigned to a new segment, half a mile west of the millenarium where you worked yesterday. It's a dull stretch. No slope, no sharp turns, no scenic bridges. Just road, flanked by fields. The kind of place travelers don't remember walking through, which means it's your job to make sure they never have to. You begin by checking the agger, the raised embankment of the road. The Romans built it high to prevent flooding and to help water drain to the sides. Your section has eroded a little, probably due to recent rains. The soil has slumped toward the ditch. If left alone, it'll collapse under the next cart that passes too close to the edge, so you reinforce it. You dig out the soft earth, wedge in stones for stability, then backfill with gravel. You pack it tight using a wooden tamper. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoes, steady as a drumbeat. The others are doing the same. No one speaks much. Talking just slows things down. By the third hour, the sun is climbing fast. It bakes your neck, reddens your knuckles. You wet your forehead with the last of your water and get back to it. Your shoulders burn from lifting the same stone types that legionaries once marched across. But it matters, because Rome doesn't run on glory, it runs on roads. You know this. Everyone in your job knows this. Roads aren't just for soldiers. They're for taxes, for messengers, for carts full of grain, for slaves being marched to market, for letters from generals, merchants, and mothers. Without the roads, there is no empire, just distant cities waiting for something that never comes. So every inch matters. Today, you're fixing a culvert, a small stone tunnel beneath the road meant to drain water during heavy rain. It's clogged with roots and silt. You crouch low and crawl inside. It smells like damp straw and dead frogs. You scrape it clear with a wooden paddle, then wedge new stones to keep the tunnel open. You back out, covered in grit. Above you, one of the overseers is waiting. He grunts his approval and scribbles a mark on his wax tablet. That's your reward, a check mark in the right place. Later, you work with another man, Aulus, repairing a spina crack in the surface. The stones have shifted, leaving a jagged seam right in the path of cartwheels. You take turns hammering the paving back into place, then fill the gap with crushed limestone. You smooth the seam with the edge of your boot. It looks seamless now. Someone will roll over it tomorrow and not notice. That's the point. By midday, the road begins to crowd. A merchant caravan passes. 4 wagons, guarded by men with short swords and heavy cloaks. One of them tosses you a fig as they roll past. You catch it and eat it slowly, savoring the sweetness. A rare gesture. Not long after, a small group of priests marches by, chanting under their breath, carrying a reliquary wrapped in red silk. You step aside. They do not make eye contact. You return to your work. The sun leans toward the west. Your arms shake now from tamping the same patch of earth 100 times. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your knees ache from crouching, but you finish. Your segment is level, dry, smooth. You step back and scan the stretch you've repaired. It doesn't look like much, just a flat stretch of stone, identical to the rest. But beneath it is gravel you tamped, mortar you mixed, cracks you sealed. No one will praise it, but no one will curse it either. And that, in this work, is the highest measure of success. As you gather your tools, the overseer approaches again. He nods, not smiling. He never smiles, but nods. Good. he says. That'll hold. You lift the pry bar onto your shoulder and begin walking back toward the shed. Your boots tap rhythmically on the same surface you've just finished restoring. Stone, lime, sweat. Repeat. That's the rhythm Rome runs on. And though your name won't be carved into the milestones, you know your hands have shaped the road beneath them. The road is quiet as you walk it one final time that evening. Tools packed, cart returned, mule unharnessed. The heat has lifted. Shadows stretch across the stones, long and soft. The dust has settled. All is still. You run your hand across the stone you reset earlier that morning. It's cool now, dry, flush with its neighbors. Someone will step on it tomorrow, or a wheel will roll over it, and it will hold. Maybe for weeks, maybe for years. It depends on the rains, on the weight, on the road's memory. You've learned that roads remember. They remember where floods gather, where wheels always wear thin, where tree roots push from below. They do not speak, but if you walk them enough, long enough, quietly enough, they tell you. The Via Appia is one of the oldest. You can feel it. There's an age to the way it rests in the landscape, not pushed against nature, but sunk into it, absorbed. You've seen newer roads, clean, quick, stone laid without thought. But the old roads, Appia, Latina, Flaminia, those were set by men who knew how to walk before they knew how to measure. You think about the first men who paved this stretch, how they must have cursed the same rocks, wiped the same sweat, cracked the same joints. Nothing about it has changed. Only the names, only the rulers. Even the empire, for all its size, is just a frame draped over roads like these. That night, after the work is done, you return home. It's a single room off the edge of a farm road, not far from the stretch you've been repairing all week. The walls are of brick and wattle. The door hangs slightly crooked. Your wife is stirring lentils over the fire. Your son is playing with a broken wheel and a stick, tracing loops in the dirt. He laughs when he sees you. You kneel beside him. The wheel clacks against the stones. He asks, "Why do you always fix the road?" You shrug. "So people can walk." "Why?" "So they don't fall." He nods, satisfied. Goes back to playing. You sit on a stool, stretch your legs, and listen to the pot boil. The food is simple. Lentils, onions, a scrap of salted fish. But tonight, it tastes different. Not richer, not fuller, just deserved. Your muscles ache, but not sharply. More like a song that's nearly finished. After supper, your wife asks if you'll be on the same stretch tomorrow. You nod. Near the curve before the bridge, she smiles. "You always liked that one." It's true. The way the sun hits it in the morning, the sound of birds in the trees, the little shrine to Mercury tucked into a niche along the path, faded, now barely a face left. You've walked that curve for years, patched it, smoothed it, watched it weather. You wonder how many others have passed it, never noticing. You sleep well that night, and when dawn breaks, you rise again. You return to the road. Today it's not stones you're replacing, but a drainage ditch. The water's begun to back up again, forming a shallow pool that will rot the foundation if left unchecked. You dig a new channel by hand, using a wooden shovel worn smooth at the handle. You slope it down toward the field edge, packing it with gravel. By midday, it flows. You stop to eat beside the miliarium again. You sit with your back against it and run your fingers over the faint Latin etched into the marble. Rome Vecticastine. 26 miles from the heart of the empire. 26 miles from the Forum, the Senate, the temples, the noise. And yet here, beneath your feet, is Rome. Not in statues, not in speeches, but in packed stone, gravel, mortar. In your hands, in the blisters on your palms. in the callus on your shoulder from carrying the pry bar. You finish your lunch and tamp the gravel around the drainage with the flat of your foot. You look down the road. No one is coming yet, but they will. A cart, a letter, a column of soldiers, a child chasing a ball, a mother walking to market, a slave being marched to auction, a man carrying a message that may or may not change anything at all. They will come, and when they do, the road will hold. The wind is always stronger on the wall. You feel it before you even open your eyes, as if it moves through the stone itself and into your bones. You shift under your cloak and rub the sleep from your eyes. The sky is just starting to lighten. The stars are dimming behind a curtain of low clouds. Somewhere, a wolf cries. You sit up. You're a Roman watchman, custos, stationed on a remote section of the northern frontier. The wall stretches behind you like a spine across the wilderness. It's not glamorous. It's not glorious, but it's yours. Your post is a tower made of rough stone, 2 levels high, roofed with timber and thatch. You share it with 3 others, all drawn from distant provinces. A Spaniard who rarely speaks, a Gaul with a bad leg, and a Syrian who carves birds into every piece of wood he touches. You've served with them long enough that silence is as familiar as speech. You rise stiffly, cloak wrapped tightly against the cold. The stones underfoot are slick with morning dew. You light the signal brazier on the tower's roof. It smokes gently, a curl of gray against the pale sky. It's not a distress call, just a sign that the post is active, awake, watching. Below, the woods stretch into a blue mist. Past them lies land you're told is dangerous. Bandits, raids, uncivilized tribes who watch your wall as often as you watch them. But today, like most days, the forest seems more tired than threatening. You check your equipment. Sling, intact. Javelin, straight. Signal horn, no crack. Water skin, half full, frozen around the edges. There's no breakfast yet, not until your shift ends. You chew on a crust of cold barley bread from last night and take a cautious sip from the skin. It stings your teeth. The sun finally breaks the tree line. You begin your first round, walking the length of your assigned wall segment. The stones are uneven, some frosted with thin ice. You've slipped before. You've seen worse. Men tumble, shatter bones, lose fingers to infection. You walk carefully, keeping your weight low, your eyes scanning the horizon with every step. The first part of the morning is always the hardest, not because of danger, but because of stillness. Your mind drifts, to home if you have one, to family if they still remember you, to the city where you once saw clean togas and warm food, to the last letter you received, months ago, maybe a year. Nothing moves on the plain below. No firelight, no hooves, no glint of blade. You reach the far guard post. The Gaul is there, rubbing his knee with oil. He nods. You nod back. You exchange no words. You tap the signal horn once, a low guttural sound, just enough to say, "All clear." Then you turn and walk the wall again. On the second pass, you stop briefly to adjust the signal flag, a strip of red cloth nailed to a beam. It's twisted, in the wind. You untangle it, let it flap freely. It's not a signal yet, just a marker. The real flags, for danger or movement, are still rolled in a leather satchel in the tower below. You return to the tower and warm your hands by the brazier. The fire is small but steady. The Syrian is carving again, this time into a splintered beam by the door. Another bird, maybe a hawk, maybe a raven. You can't tell. He never names them, just carves and moves on. The sun is higher now, the shadows shorter. You begin your second round. You pass the same stones, the same trees, the same bend in the river far below. But now the forest feels slightly more alive. A deer moves through the brush, A bird calls from the trees. You squint against the light, watching for movement that doesn't belong, but nothing does. Your shift continues. You walk the wall, back and forth, hour after hour, with your javelin in hand and your eyes always forward. You think about what it means to watch something that rarely changes, what it means to be the eyes of an empire no one sees. But the wall sees, and you keep walking. You count your steps on the wall, not because you're required to, but because it gives the hours shape. 117 paces from the tower to the end of your assigned section. 117 back. Twice an hour. Sometimes more if you're anxious. Sometimes fewer when the wind is strong and your eyes sting from the cold. This part of the empire is never warm. Even in summer, the mornings bite. In winter, the frost clings to your beard. Your breath fogs and hangs in front of you like a spirit reluctant to rise. The wall groans beneath your boots, settling, shifting, remembering. You spot movement in the distance. For a moment, you stiffen, hand on your javelin, shoulders tense. But it's only the Spaniard from the western tower. He's out early, walking the lower road. He glances up, sees you, raises 2 fingers. You return the gesture. No alarm, no signal, just routine. That's the strange thing about guarding the wall. Your work is most successful when absolutely nothing happens. The enemy, if there is one, is invisible today. Still, the quiet brings its own dangers. Thoughts creep in. Memory takes shape. You think of your father's house, a modest insula in the shadow of the Capitoline Hill. You remember the sound of carts in the alley, the smell of fish stew, the hiss of hot oil. You remember a wooden stool by the door, and the day you first wore sandals too large for your feet. You also remember why you left. Debt, shame, or maybe just the pull of something further away. When the conscription officer called your name, you didn't hesitate. Now, the Empire's edge is home. At midday, you rotate off duty briefly. You descend the tower stairs and sit in the lower chamber near the cook fire. A few coals still glow from breakfast. You rake them forward, blow softly, add a twig. Flame returns. Your meal is simple: hard bread, dried meat, a lump of aged cheese. You eat slowly, savoring the salt. The Gaul joins you, grunts a greeting, and tears into his own meal with cracked hands. The Syrian does not eat. He naps in the corner, face turned toward the wall. No one talks. You've all told your stories before. Once, twice, 3 times over. Now silence feels more honest. You resume your shift with a full stomach and colder air. The sun is past its peak, and the wind returns. It rushes through the crenellations in irregular gusts, tugging at your cloak and pulling words from your mouth when you mutter to yourself. There's a crack in one of the merlons, a vertical seam that wasn't there last week. Freeze and thaw have opened the stone. You note it in your wax tablet. You'll report it to the engineer next time he makes his rounds. For now, you stuff a rag into it to keep water out. A temporary fix, like everything else. A raven lands on the tower beam above. You watch it for a while. It watches back. Hours pass. You shift your weight from foot to foot. Stamp your legs to keep the blood moving. Roll your shoulders beneath your armor. A dull ache has settled into your back, the kind that doesn't speak loudly but never leaves. At the end of your segment, you stop and look out again. The woods remain unmoved. Still no signal fires in the far hills. Still no runners with urgent dispatches. Still no horns or flares or shadowy movement between trees. Just the wind, the wall, and the long, slow breath of the afternoon. And yet you keep watch, because the moment you don't, something will happen. That's how the wall works. You are its eyes, its ears, its presence. And whether anyone remembers you or not, Whether the next emperor builds temples or tears them down, whether the stones crumble in 50 years or 500, the wall needs watching. And so you walk again. 117 steps. 117 back. The sun dips low, brushing the tops of the trees with fire. The shadow of the tower falls long across the wall, stretching over your patrol path like a companion. You've walked this stretch more than 1,000 times, and it never gets easier, just more familiar. Evening doesn't bring rest, it brings new tension. Most attacks, rare as they are, come at dusk, not because it's dark, but because it's uncertain. The outlines blur, the shadows stretch. A distant rider might be a deer, a patch of smoke might be fog. Everything seems one breath removed from clarity. You light the night brazier. The coals were kept warm all afternoon in a clay jar beneath a slab of stone. You feed them dry moss and olive oil, and blow gently until the flame curls upward. It flickers in a shielded pot atop the tower, bright enough to be seen by nearby posts, faint enough not to make you a target. You check the signal flags again. They're folded tightly, sorted by color. Red for conflict, green for request, black for death. You've never had to raise the black one. You hope you never will. The Syrian joins you on the upper level, chewing the edge of a reed. He says nothing, just looks out over the woods. A few birds spiral upward from the trees and vanish into the darkening sky. Eventually, he mutters something in his native tongue. You don't ask for a translation. You just nod. At dusk, the air grows colder. You fasten your cloak tighter. The wind rattles the wooden slats at the edge of the platform. The wall is solid, but the tower moans like it remembers every storm. You begin your final round. 117 steps. 117 back. Again and again. You try not to count the steps out loud, but eventually the numbers spill from your lips in a whisper. They mark time better than the sun now. The world beyond the wall turns black. The brazier glows orange. The woods vanish into shadow. You pause at the midpoint. There's a tree, twisted, half dead, that you always use as a marker. Tonight, it looks like a man crouching. For just a moment, your body tenses. Then you blink. It's still just a tree. That's the danger, isn't it? Not the raids, not the wolves, not the darkness, but the slow erosion of certainty. Your mind begins to invent what your eyes can't confirm. You grip your javelin tighter. Back at the tower, the Gaul is on the lower platform, humming quietly as he oils his sling. It's an old tune, one you've heard him hum since your first season on the wall. He says it's about home, though he never tells you the words. You nod to him. He nods back. Shifts are shorter at night. 2 hours on, 2 hours off. You'll rest in turns, barely enough to sleep, just enough to survive. You descend the tower, find a dry corner near the stairwell, and wrap yourself in a thick woolen blanket. You eat another crust of bread, harder now, and drink the last of your water. You lie flat on the stone. You do not expect dreams, but they come anyway. Not of war or home, but of walking, always walking, up and down the same stretch. Your footprints, wearing grooves into the stone, long after the Empire has forgotten your name. You wake with a jolt to the soft knock of the Syrian's hand. He points upward. Your turn again. You climb back into the cold. The moon has risen, a thin crescent. The wall gleams faintly in its light. The brazier smokes. The woods below are silent. You start walking again. 117 steps. 117 back. Nothing stirs. And that is the miracle. That you are here, awake, cold, invisible. And nothing is happening. Because sometimes the most important line in history is the one that didn't break.